Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar of the Outcome Harvesting community. Happy to see you all. My name is Carmen Wilson Grau. I am one of the Outcome Harvesting community facilitators, and I will be presenting today as well as facilitating. The other two Outcome Harvesting community facilitators, Julius Heers and Connie Hoytink, couldn't join us because they're on holidays. So today it's only me. And now I'll let my co-presenters introduce themselves. Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Serpy. I'm the Director of Learning Evidence and Impact at PACT, and we are a international development nonprofit that have used outcome harvesting across a variety of different types of international development projects. So thanks for being here today. Karen?
Yes, hi. My name is Karen Biesbroek. I'm based in the Netherlands. I work for Oxfam Novib, where I have the privilege of leading the team of meal advisors. In Oxfam Novib, we mainly use outcome harvesting for monitoring purposes, but we have good experiences in using it in combining it with contribution analysis.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so we have a more of an interactive webinar for you all today. First, we want to show you quickly, we're going to have multiple sharing. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then Lauren will do the same. Let me know when you're set, Lauren.
One moment. Should be ready.
Okay, so you should be able to see three tabs on top of your screen. One tab is just the view of all of us who are here participating. Then you should see a tab that says Carmen Wilson's screen and another tab that says Lauren Serpy's screen. The reason I'm explaining this is, in case you didn't know, it's very handy. I love this new feature of Zoom, but also because you'll be able to switch between screens when we go and do some of the exercises or questions. Either way, I'm sharing all the material that we are using today in the chat, so you can access that now and download the material if you want. If anyone's not able to get in, let me know, but you should be able to access the drive. We are recording this meeting, just so you know. The purpose of this is to be able to share the recording afterwards on our outcome harvesting website. Okay, that's it from my side. I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Everyone, we're so glad to have you here today. Some of you may be familiar with us presenting different versions of this tool in the past. This is our revision of it after our first draft version of it was released last year. But I will get into the history of this on the coming slides. So we call this our co-created tool because we've developed it across organizations, our organizations of the authors, practitioners, but we've had inputs from you and the community along the way in the different variations. So next slide, Carmen. So we've already introduced who we are, the presenters, authors here today, the three of us. And these are, we've already introduced ourselves. This is just, you can refer back to. Our other co-authors are my former colleagues at PACT. Many of you in the US for sure know, and from afar know, that the international development sector in the US has been decimated with the destruction of USAID under this current regime. And so PACT has significantly shrunk its number of projects when projects were closed early, a majority of our projects. So these staff are not currently with us anymore, but these Tripti Pandey and Cha Turaturn were also our part of our co-authors. So we want to acknowledge them, of course. Next slide. So the background and purpose of the tool, again, a few of you may have been in some of these sessions before, but just briefly, in 2023, the group of five of us presented, actually four of us and Carmen was part of it. We presented at AEA about our different uses and tailoring of the outcome harvesting approach. And during the Q&A, it was uncovered that one of the big points of challenges for practitioners of outcome harvesting was the substantiation portion of the method. And so the idea was born out of that there might be additional guidance that could be useful for practitioners around this piece, this step of outcome harvesting. So we developed a draft tool, and then at the European Evaluation Association conference, European Evaluation Society, I believe, conference in September 2024, we presented the tool at a session, and it was a session where we asked people to utilize the tool with the case study that we gave them. And the purpose of that was for them to really try out the tool and then give us feedback on it for us to modify it to make it more useful for practitioners, which is what we then did. It took us a long time because in the early parts of this year, obviously, a lot of us, particularly US-based organizations, were dealing with the fallout of the closure of USAID. So this was put on hold, and we've resumed it now, and we're sharing this. So all of this, this tool is really it's meant to be complementary, a supplement to the chapter 5 on substantiation in the Outcome Harvesting book by Ricardo Wilson Grau. Next slide, please. I imagine most of you are familiar with outcome harvesting, but in case not, just as a reminder, there's 6 steps of the approach, and after you design the harvest, you collect the outcomes as part of the harvest by engaging informants. Then you are meant to substantiate. So this really means obtaining independent third-party individuals' viewpoints on the accuracy of the harvested outcomes, on the contribution of the outcome, and all the information that you gathered. So it's really supposed to be a check on that information. So this step is meant to enhance the reliability of the data. It's meant in a way to validate the findings, and it adds that layer of rigor to using this approach to the harvest. And the challenge historically, traditionally, has been amongst many practitioners is a lack of clarity on how to substantiate by remaining faithful to the method, but within the different constraints that all of us face, time, budget, access to substantiators, etc. Next slide, please. So why this webinar? So substantiation is this critical piece of this approach. It's what differentiates from other approaches, qualitative approaches. So it is critical to carry this out. And what we wanted to do is provide, again, this tool, not with definitive instructions on what to do in terms of substantiation, but a series of questions to ask and different considerations to make as you are carrying out the step of substantiation. And so we're going to share the tool. On this webinar, we're going to give you guidance on how to use the tool using a worked case study that you can see if you toggle to my screen, and also Carmen has shared it. And then we want to gather your input as we ask questions. We will be allowing questions after each step that we present of the 3 steps of this tool. So we want to gather your input as we go, and we'll make any tweaks for clarification purposes to the tool, and then release it for everyone to use in your work. Next slide, please. So a brief introduction to the tool, and then we'll get into each step individually. This is the link to the tool. I believe it's in the chat already, Carmen. Can you give me a thumbs up if yes? But otherwise, when you receive these slides, the link to this is here. So it's in a Google Doc location, I believe, Carmen, correct? This link has been shared?
The link is on our website, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, this is actually, yeah, no, you're right. It's on our website, and here in this link are the working documents for today.
Okay, great, excellent. Okay, so this is for you to come back to when you have the slide deck in the future. Next slide, please. So the way that we broke down the process of carrying out substantiation was into three steps. So the first step is determining your substantiation purpose. You could be using outcome harvesting for monitoring, right? Like Karen said, they usually use it for, or for formative or summative evaluation purpose. So the first step is to ask yourself what you're using the outcome harvesting for. So really having clarity around the purpose of why you're carrying this out. And this may determine whether you substantiate at all. And that mainly means when you're using outcome harvesting for monitoring, you might not need to substantiate at each step of the monitoring. Rather, you would pick a firm points in time. The step two is then after you harvest the outcome, reviewing all the harvested outcomes, and then reflecting on the parameters of your study. So these would be constraints you have, needs that you have, etc. So the step 2A is reviewing all of your outcomes and determining, asking a set of questions. You'll see in what the exercise it will do, whether you need more information on each outcome, and other questions of that nature. And then in the second step of step two, you are listing your potential constraints. These are budget, people's time, access to substantiators, and others. So it's just being clear and laying those out because those influence how you're able to carry out substantiation as well. And finally, in step three, you're designing your substantiation model. So here you're ready to substantiate. You will look and reflect back at the steps 2A and steps 2B. So your constraints and needs, the different reflections you've had on each of the outcomes you've harvested. And you determine if you can fill those needs with existing data sources. And if not, you plan for substantiating with third-party individuals. And so step three has the considerations for how you would carry out the substantiation for you to think, again, reflecting on your needs and your constraints, etc. Next slide, please. So this is the worked case study. This is just what we're going to come back to for the different exercises that we do during this session. And you can always toggle at the top. It's shared under my screen, Lauren's screen. But this is based on an actual example that PACT carried out. And so this just explains that this was a women's economic empowerment project in Cambodia. 17 outcomes were harvested across 3 regions of the country. The budget was very limited. The time constraints were a short amount of time to complete between the harvest and when the report was due. And we have phone and email access to substantiators. And this was meant as an end-line evaluation and would be shared with the donor. So these are just the pieces of the case study that will be relevant for us to consider when we do the exercises working through the tool. Next slide. Okay, so very briefly before I pass it over to Karen, and I might ask if actually, Karen, if you want to add anything, please feel free because you have used outcome harvesting for monitoring more than PACT has traditionally used it more in an evaluation purpose. But in this step, it's asking yourself again why you're using this. What is the purpose of your outcome harvest? And if you're monitoring, then we wouldn't suggest that you do a substantiation every month or something as part of your harvest, but rather you would determine the point in time that made the most sense. And for evaluation, and almost always, again, because this is a key piece of this approach of outcome harvesting, differentiates and adds a distinctive from other qualitative methods. It adds a level of rigor when you're using it for evaluation. That substantiation should be carried out in some fashion. And again, this tool will help you figure out the best way, the most faithful way to go about doing that. Karen or Carmen, do you want to add anything about, sorry, next slide. And then I think I already went over that. Yeah.
No, yeah, the thing if you are using it for monitoring and you follow the literature to the letter and you're in an outcome harvesting workshop and you're like, yeah, now I'm supposed to do substantiation, but everyone is here. We're not going to do that before we move to learning. So that is how indeed, for us the question also came up. But apart from that, I'm completely in agreement with what you're saying.
Thanks, Karen. Carmen, do you want to add anything?
Well, the other reason is that when you're using it for monitoring, usually you use the outcomes for internal purposes, internal learning.
Right.
Um, and therefore you decide to, wait with the substantiation until, some time has passed or you had a, bigger set of your outcomes, or when you decide to use the data to share externally. And of course, also because of resources, it is quite, time intensive and it requires resources. So that's another reason why you might decide to put it off a little bit if
Mm-hmm.
using for substantiation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks for clarifying that. That's helpful to think about, and then you'll see that this is part of our reflection process and the tools that we get to again when we think about the intended data use of the harvest, etc. Next slide, and I think we're on. Does anybody so far? It's okay if nobody does, but we wanted to pause after each step, and then we'll have time at the end as well. But any questions on step one so far on determining the purpose of this substantiation? Either just raise your hand or come off mute if we don't see you. Any questions yet on step one, or any reflections or comments on any challenges you faced when determining the purpose of your substantiation? Questions or comments?
This is Chris Allen. Sorry, I would just make one comment. One thing you jumped over fairly quickly, it was a good list that you had. One thing you jumped over fairly quickly was outcomes need more work. I forget what word you used for it there. That's the one that kills me all the time. And that winds up being incredibly time consuming. Useful, but time consuming. The next slide, it was. All 17 outcomes need further clarification.
Mm-mm.
I find that enormously time consuming, and that's what runs me over deadlines
Mm-hmm.
when we need to
Mm-hmm.
analyze and write.
Yeah, that's an interesting reflection. I don't know if are you finding that you have, do you think maybe there's something more in the instrument used to further probe, or is it just the nature of like people providing these outcomes and then us reflecting on them and then realizing that more is needed? I'm wondering if there's any kind of solution to try to head that off.
I mean, it's just outcomes are hard to get right, especially all three elements of it. Even for the best experienced people, there's a lot of discussion back and forth, and people pitch them at different levels. Some people will go
Yeah,
super high to impact level. Other people are just coming out of a workshop or something.
yeah,
And
true.
and no outcome satisfies everybody. I've never
Yeah.
had one where everyone said, "Oh yes, they're all perfect." Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, yeah, I mean that kind of also reflects the iterative nature of this approach too, right? Which is the benefit of it, but acknowledging that it's a challenge as well, for sure. Thanks, Chris. Any other questions or comments before we go to step
Hi.
two? Go
Hi.
ahead.
Sorry, Sarai. Just on the, I'm following up on Chris's point. I just wanted to maybe flag a question that might come up, as in, sorry, a question that might be answered in subsequent slides. But
Okay.
one thing that struck me as you were talking was about the distinction between being able to fill the, to further work out of the outcome statements, whichever elements are still needing work versus substantiation. I just wonder whether there might be a point where substantiation might also be picking up on some of the data and whether. So I guess in that slide, I was just wondering whether that was part in that slide that you had shown with the case study. Was that after the substantiation had happened, or is that just as you're about to go into
Oh,
making decisions about
yeah.
substantiation and stuff?
Sorry.
So yeah,
Good
thank you.
question. Yeah, this case study is that the bullet about 17 outcomes need further clarification is after the outcomes have been harvested when we've reviewed them and prior to substantiation. So part of our decision making process of how to go about substantiation. One of the pieces of information is that we thought that all of them needed further information. We needed gaps filled in there were some of the holes in the harvested outcomes that we had.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we go into step 2? Okay, over to you, Karen. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Okay. I also sent an invite via Outlook. I know people try to move in that way. Anyways, yes. Carmen, can you go back to sharing your screen?
I am
Slide.
sharing my screen. I think you need
Okay.
to
Yes.
click
There
on
you go.
the. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, so we're now at step 2, where basically you're making a kind of inventory of your situation, having a critical look at the characteristics of the individual outcome statements that you have, and also realizing, what would be possible in your specific context in terms of substantiation. Next slide, please. And your reflection on each of these outcome statements will result in an overview of outcomes that are candidates for substantiation, with the reason why, and probably also some first ideas on potential substantiators. Now let us have a closer look to the worksheet that we developed to support your inventory. That is in the next slide. And of course, if you start using this worksheet, as always, with outcome harvesting, you can always mold it to suit your own needs. It just depends a bit on your own situation. But if you prepare this substantiation process, it's good practice to first make an overview of the outcome statements that you have, either by their title or another type of profile of each outcome statement, numbered, of course, for ease of reference, because we're always systematically minded people. And in designing your substantiation process, the reflection in question 1 is rather general. Like, will you use the result of this substantiation process for a better understanding of which change happened and why? And how, or rather for accountability purposes, or perhaps for both. And so this use of the substantiation is really important also for the other questions. And the answer to this question that you ask yourself really focuses your attention on, for instance, either the program's contribution to the outcome, or rather to the exactness of the outcome itself. And then under question 2, you can jot down which crucial information in this regard is still missing in the outcome statement, if any. Then, if the validation of the outcome statement is also done for accountability purposes, you need to ensure independent verification. And when you are looking at an outcome statement and you know that perhaps this is the one to be substantiated, if you already have ideas on the person that might be suitable for to serve as the substantiator, you can already jot this down in the last column of such a worksheet. Then it might be that your practice in harvesting outcomes already involves the routine collection of evidence of the change, evidence of the contribution. So in some cases, some of the evidence is speaking so much for itself that would not where that particular outcome would not be the best one to start substantiating, because it's already clear from the material that you have available. And like I said, especially in the case that you are doing the substantiation, at least in part, for an accountability purpose, where the authentication by an independent and knowledgeable person will be required, you will be aware of the fact that it will require time and resources to reach out to these people. So in case you really lack the resources, which in some case is the situation, in some situations is the matter, then you may feel forced to give in on the quality of this process. And we know that this happens. It is unfortunate, but you need to realize that if you do not ask these verification questions to an external knowledgeable person, then you should not really call that part of your work substantiation. Yeah, might be the case. Now, so this is the worksheet in which you make a clear picture for yourself on what do we have and what do we need it for. Now, so we're using Lauren's case. And Lauren, quick question to you. In your worked case, your team members substantiated outcome statements mainly or exclusively to inform the design of a new program, right?
A hopeful new program. So it was the end where we there was probably or hopefully going to be a follow-on. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So bear that in mind, participants, for what we're going to do. And the aim of that program in Cambodia that Lauren was referring to was women's economic empowerment. Then, Carmen, are you going to share the
Yes,
worksheet?
the worksheets are
Yeah.
at the link that I sent you, but I'm
Yeah.
also sharing the documents now in the chat so everyone can access.
Okay. So that means that a Word version of that worksheet is now available via the chat. Please download it so that you can work on it for yourself on the case that you will also receive from Carmen. So from a set of 3 outcomes from the case that Lauren was presenting. So she was referring to the 17 outcomes of their Cambodia program. Of course, it's for the purpose of this exercise, it's not possible to deal with all of them, but we selected 3 of them. Are these available? Yes. So you need to look at the example outcomes. That is the material that you would be working with for the sake of this exercise. So the idea is to use that the information on the example outcomes and have a first feeling of how it is to use that worksheet in determining ultimately, which of these outcomes would you select for substantiation and why? So in order to make up your mind, you may need to formulate for yourself, what do you really need to know more about? Which resources might already exist that could clarify whether the outcome statement already accurately represents reality? Basically, the exercise is to make up your mind, if you cannot substantiate all the outcomes, how are you going to decide which of these outcome statements would be the one to substantiate if you would only have resources to do one? We will have a couple of minutes, some 10 minutes.
Yeah, we'll come if people just work basically on mute. Feel free to come off mute. We're not going to do breakout groups or anything, but we just wanted you to do this exercise for, let's do about 8 minutes now until 9:40, just to stay on time. So reflect on those, the sample outcomes, and then work through the worksheet just to get a sense of how to carry out this step 2A, and then we'll come back together and discuss and have any questions.
All right, I have a question. So Karen, you said you wanted us not to work in the Google Doc itself, but to download a Word version because Google's not giving me access. It's not letting me download it. I can only work in the.
Yeah.
It should also be in the chat, Chris, the worksheet. I just
Yeah.
shared it through the chat for those of you who couldn't access. And yes, if you can access the drive, ideally you should download it so people can use the same document. Are you able to see it in the chat?
Yeah, is that different than what you shared before in the chat?
It's the same. I just wanted to make access easier for you. So it's the worksheets, the example outcomes, and the case study.
Okay.
I see a frown, Chris. Are you okay?
Well, just that was already in the Google Doc. I
Oh,
wasn't getting
okay.
anything. So now,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what's different about these. That's all. So it's taking time now.
No, it's the same documents. I just wanted to facilitate access for people instead, in case they
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
open the link or, yeah, but
Okay.
it's the same documents.
And again, obviously, for the purposes of this exercise, it's an imperfect. You don't have the full view, but we want you to get you don't have the full set of harvested outcomes, but we would just want you to get a sense and a feel for listing out all of your outcomes and reflecting on each one across these first few questions in the step 2A. So it's outcome by outcome at this stage. So it's not perfect. Just do your best. The purpose of this is just to get a feel for doing this first step, and then of course we want questions and any feedback when we come back in at 9:40.
We have some 2 more minutes. Okay, shall we compare notes? Who would like to start? We can do this popcorn style, eh? Who would like to start sharing their opinion? How was it to use the worksheet? And did it help you making up your mind as to which, in this situation, which one you would select for substantiation?
Karen, I can comment if that's okay. This is Michelle.
Yes.
I'm finding the concept of this tool really, really useful. And a few things that I began to think about or
Shell,
struggle
it's
with
kind
as
of,
I
I'm
was.
sorry to interrupt, it's kind of hard to hear you. I don't know if you can get closer to the mic or I'm not sure
Oh,
what the issue is.
let me test something. Is that better now?
No,
Okay. I'm going to put it in the chat window.
we can hear you if we turn our volumes up very loud and then turn it back down. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. I'm equally happy to put it in the chat window if needed, so you can guide me on that. But really appreciating the concept of this tool. And one thing that stood out to me from my own experience is that I would need to add in a reflection on the significance of the outcomes. It may just have to do with the type and purpose of the evaluations that I usually facilitate, but I usually find that we need to gravitate towards prioritizing substantiation of the more significant outcomes. So I would want to have a way to assess what those were. And I also began to wonder how you would do this in an evaluation where you have a high volume of outcomes. Because it's already a fair bit of work to develop the outcomes, and then adding in the reassessment of each outcome is brilliant, but also more work. So curious how you would handle it in a large volume study. Thanks.
Can I just, before we respond to Michelle, follow-up question? When you say adding the significance, do you mean adding the significance of the outcome to be substantiated, or do you mean adding significance as a criteria to select which outcomes to substantiate? So which are
I would,
considered more significant and should
yeah,
be,
thank you. Like, I would, for my purposes, I would add significance as a criteria. So on the
okay,
worksheet, I would probably add
okay,
an additional column on
yeah,
significance. Thanks.
great, thank you.
Shall we take a few more ideas of the participants?
Before responding to Michelle's question, you mean, Karen? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So what she said was that she realized that in order for her to make up her mind, if she would adjust the worksheet, she would include significance of the outcome statement as in her overview. Who else has an and by the way, Michelle, which one, by applying, the information that you had, I'll come back to you, Valerie. Which one did you identify as the one example outcome that you would select for substantiation, and why?
I don't know. I didn't think about it yet in that way. I was thinking more about the ins and outs of how I would use the tool. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. More from a methodological perspective.
Yeah,
Understandable.
thanks.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And how about you, Valerie?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I think I haven't also come to a conclusion yet, because for me 8 minutes was way too short. I just did one. uh, yeah, I agree with this. I think it's very useful, this spreadsheet, to start mapping out things. What I would, for example, for me to decide which one then to substantiate or not later is so this spreadsheet is really to start looking at them one by one, and then of course you have to do a kind of an overall assessment. Okay, these are the outcomes I have. So for example, on the column on resources, where you just said yes I have, no I don't have resources, and time, or yes just limited. Yeah, it's still because it's thought through outcome per outcome. I think it still makes it difficult to kind of think overall. I don't know if I make myself clear. I think it would be good, rather than having as option yes, yes, but, or no, if we could be a little bit more explicit. Yes, I have resources and time to talk to 5 people to get more information. And I know it's not always possible, huh? Because then you can decide, okay, I have 10 outcomes and I have resources where I can go and substantiate 5. Or if I look at the names and contacts to talk with, maybe some, it's the same person I would have to talk to for several outcomes. So that could help me to have an overall, but that, of course, it first has to be one by one. And then, yeah, so maybe I'm kind of, yeah, missing like a step or something in the two way to put it all together to have a kind of a decision of yeah, how many outcomes can I substantiate, or how do I prioritize, which ones do I prioritize and for which reason? Yeah.
That's helpful. I'm actually wondering, looking at question 3 now, I think we kind of conflated two things. Like, we're asking if there's existing sources or not. We're not yet thinking about the resources and constraints. That's in 2B, and that's where we consider everything as a whole, not outcome by outcome. So the purpose of this sheet is really to just outcome by outcome get a sense of, and I completely agree with Michelle that I think it would be really helpful to have some way to classify the significance. Again, if we're needing to prioritize, we can have that as a data point, like we prioritize the top 5 least clear and most significant outcomes or something like that. But yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think we should tweak how we treat question 3.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think the intention we had when we formulated question 3 is more in the sense of it. Sometimes you have an outcome statement that in itself may not be self-explanatory. Or it may not be entirely clear whether what we say about the contribution is actually as clear-cut, and that is also, I think, in the exercise. But there may be additional evidence attached to it, and perhaps the information is rather over there, and then that could be among the resources that are also available. Yeah, and that make the consideration different than if you would only look at the outcome statement as such. And I also appreciate very much Michelle's consideration for the significance. You could even also give a kind of weight on the level of the contribution of the program to the outcome statement, so that if you want, you could ultimately filter from all the outcome statements that you have for the ones that are very significant and also have a high score on the claim of contribution of the program to the outcome.
Mm.
But of course, I agree with Michelle. It's already quite a lot of work. But yeah, we don't know yet, how this works. But somehow, you need to. This substantiation, we are all struggling with it, and something needs to happen, to help people do it in an easier way. And we thought, okay, let us first inventory what is there, so that helps making up our mind on, which outcomes would be the most suitable to want to be substantiated.
Sorry, just to add to that and quickly to respond to Michelle's question, I think I agree. I can imagine me filling this in for 50 plus outcomes that I want to substantiate, but I think the worksheet is optional, and the value of the tool is just it guides you with those questions to think through when you're looking at your set of outcomes, right? And maybe, especially for people who are new to outcome harvesting and feel a bit unsure about this step, I think they can rely more on the worksheet because it really guides them and helps them in their thinking. Or you could decide, let's just use the worksheet for those outcomes that I want to substantiate, but I still, you need to discuss with others if there's really those that you should substantiate or not. I think it just helps you in your thinking about it. But again, it's optional. I think the value is just having the questions and think this process through following those questions. Yes, Karen, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw a hand from Omondi, but I don't see it anymore. What would be your contribution, Omondi?
Thank you. I just wanted to just echo, I think it has been said what I wanted to say, but just to echo the tool, it's useful. And for me, the aspect of just significance ranking would actually now make you to be able to know exactly which outcome to pursue for substantiation. Because I was stuck between outcome 2 and 3.
Because can you explain briefly why?
For me, I was stuck between 2 and 3 because one, if you look at microfinance institution adjusting its lending practices, that can be as a result of other factors beside this project, because what this project did in terms of contribution was facilitate dialogue between women and financial institution. And again, we want to assume that there are other factors, and these other factors and maybe other contribution as always, but I don't think that one, how many dialogues were done, and what was discussed in these dialogues? Was there commitment? I would want to see that, because otherwise it can be just a coincidence that we had a dialogue and the microfinance was also planning to do the same because of policy change within government or something like that. And the third one also, including women in planning and decision making, just because the project advocated for it, there could be other aspects as well. So I know in contribution we had other aspects, but for me, the contribution doesn't come up so strongly. So that's why I was saying if we had significance also ranked and we look at contribution, then we can be able to make some decision. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. And is there anyone else who had a similar view or a different way of reasoning? Different considerations, sorry. Is there anyone who would have gone for the first one, for instance?
Can I say, sorry, can I jump in?
Yes,
Please. And let's take, I think,
Sorry.
Siska, sorry if I'm
Yeah.
mispronouncing that. Let's take this as a last comment and then we'll move on to step 2B just in the interest of time. Please go ahead.
Okay, I was also looking, I think, as Paul, for what could be a criterion for choosing one or the other outcomes. So yeah, rather than looking at the significance, because I find it difficult to. The significance always seems to be still a little bit aspirational, like this is the outcome, and the significance is that we hope in the future it will lead to this and this and that. So I find it difficult to make a rating based on the significance because, because it's often it's difficult to say to what extent it's still aspirational at this point in time. So I was trying to look at, okay, when substantiation is about either the accuracy of the outcome itself, is it real? Or the contribution, how credible is the contribution of the intervention? So I was looking more for differences between the different outcomes in that sense. Yeah, well, I wasn't able to complete that because of a lack of time, but just to check with you, whether this is indeed how you envisioned the template to be used in this way. So my inclination was to look at the weakest link between the intervention and the outcome. So more in the accuracy of the contribution part.
Yeah. No, and you can also hear that in Omondi's answer. And I think it also resonates well with the whole purpose of this fictive substantiation, which, mind you, was geared at having a better understanding of how changes happened as input to that future programming. So I can understand why both Omondi and Siska emphasize the need for clarity in the contribution as a reason for selecting one of these example outcomes for further scrutiny. But let us move on to the because this is you look at your set of outcomes, but there's other sometimes harsh realities as well. So let us look at step 2B. That is another dimension of your inventory. So Lauren, in your case, we're going to talk about the Cambodia case that you already presented. So in your case, the audience, was it external or internal?
External. It was with the funder. And well, it wasn't something that was published and shared more widely than the funder, but it wasn't just for our internal use.
Okay, and how, did that play a strong role in how you went about in substantiating?
Yes, I mean, we kept that in mind because, as we were just saying in this discussion, I mean, the piece that was really important to establish was understanding the how change happened for future project that we hope the follow-on project would happen, and also to show how ideally a strong contribution link
between the work that we did and the results to, you know, convince the donor that we should continue doing the work as well, right? So that was a piece that we wanted to have as clear as possible if we were able to tell that story.
Yeah. And what kind of resources were available for that process, both in terms of budget available and staff resources?
So we had only staff time. We had 2 MEL monitoring, evaluation, and learning staff. So just their level of effort time, LOE, their time to work on it. And we did not have money for a consultant. We didn't have money for travel.
Yeah, you know, these are indeed important things that matter for making up your mind on which kind of what is possible and not in substantiation. Was there any time constraint as to, you know, when this report was due? Did you have ample time?
We had 3 weeks from the time, I don't remember the exact full timeline, but from the harvest to when the donor needed the report was 3 weeks. So not very much time to substantiate, analyze, write a report.
Yeah, indeed. And how did you actually conduct it? Was it possible to do it in person, or did you talk to people, or was it in writing?
It was mostly in-person phone calls, and I believe there were a few that we had to try to gather some inputs via email. But because we didn't have time to travel and it was across 3 regions, they were via phone.
And in that particular case, were there any social or cultural considerations that really played a role in how you could do the substantiation?
No, if we had the possibility, actually another Cambodia project that conducted outcome harvesting was able to do focus groups in different areas with some like citizens groups. And the cultural consideration there was just was paying attention to, you know, pretty traditional things that moderators pay attention to, making sure it's that there wasn't one dominant person. We were often, in this case, splitting between like youth and elders, so there wasn't like a competition between or like a deferring to the elders to speak in these situations.
Yeah.
But for this case, no, not really any social cultural considerations. Our staff was that was conducting the phone calls, the substantiation were Cambodian, so it's conducted in Khmer, and no real issues there.
Yeah. But I can also imagine that in some cultures, it's not done, for instance, in a group setting to openly question the authenticity of an outcome. So, you know, if saying no in a more direct Dutch way is not something, you need to take that into account. Yeah. So the purpose of this this slide was to take the participants to this webinar to the harsh realities that you sometimes face. You have little time, you have money or not, you can access people or not. You need to factor that in, not only the number of outcomes that you can do, but it is a the Dutch way, you need to be realistic about what is possible before you dive head first into the substantiation process. So this was the step 2, where you inventory both the material that you have, you make nuance, which outcomes could qualify for substantiation, and get real as to your own possibilities and impossibilities. And these 2 lenses will then lead you in step 3 with Carmen towards a model. But before we move there, any questions about step 2?
And just a note, thank you for those. Please raise your hand or come off mute, but for those putting comments in the chat, we will obviously export that and take your comments into consideration from there. But questions or comments on step 2?
No, Teresa Rai already censors the outcomes before they come to the substantiation. Okay, well, that eases substantiation then.
Are there any, we do, in the interest of time, we'll move on, but I am curious if there's other constraints that you've had in your practice that aren't reflected in the list for 2B. If you could put them in the chat, that would be helpful. If there's any other types of constraints, parameters, limitations that we might have forgotten about to have practitioners reflect on, please put those in the chat. Carmen, should we go to step 3?
Yes, thank you, Lauren and Karen. So the final step of the tool is step 3, which is designing your substantiation model. And this is basically where we pull it all together after going through, the first questions about whether or not to substantiate, and then step 2, which criteria, which ones to choose to substantiate, and your constraints. So during this step, you are going to look into 2 specific ways of substantiating. One is if you can substantiate with existing data sources, or if not, how you plan or how to plan for substantiating with third-party individuals. So when you have your outcomes ready, you might have data sources that you can look at. Let me just struggling with 2 screens here. You might have existing data sources that can be used for substantiation. So this could be, for example, printed documents or articles. It could be pictures. It could be other online material that can help you in getting the information that you need to substantiate your outcomes. However, data sources will often not provide you sufficient information on contribution, and they're really useful just to verify accuracy of your outcomes, and fill in missing data, but you won't get, that additional perspective that you might be looking for when you substantiate. So in that case, so either if you don't have existing data sources or these turn out to be inconclusive, then you go to the next step of the tool, which is designing your substantiation model. During this step, we suggest 5 questions that you can go through that can help you design this model. So these questions are about, the number of outcomes that you're going to substantiate, the depth that's needed. Is it going to be in writing, conversation? How many substantiators are you going to approach per outcome, and what kind of, substantiators, or what type of substantiators are you going to approach? So here on this slide is the last worksheet that we have. That's also in the documents that we shared, which is basically a summary of your substantiation model. Filling this in might be useful for you to also include afterwards, for example, in a report to explain how you carried out your substantiation. So the first question is about how many outcomes will you substantiate? So are you going to substantiate all of your outcomes, when you have the resources that allow for it, or because you have a limited number of outcomes and it's doable, or because that is what you seem necessary to do to make sure that the evidence is valid for your uses. Or you can decide, I'm going to substantiate a targeted sample, so a purposive sample of the outcomes following the criteria that we just went through. And again, this depends on the uses of the outcome harvest and the evidence. So if, for example, you are doing it for accountability purposes, then you'll probably select those outcome statements for which there is doubt or disagreement. So in this case that Lauren explained, they chose a targeted sample due to limited time and resources. The second question that you can ask yourself is, what is the level of depth in questions asked to substantiator? So what type of consultation will you carry out? So the most simple one is just a questionnaire. So this is basically a document which has less than 5 questions. Most of them are close-ended with yes or no responses and the option to comment. This may be used when you need limited information or when the substantiators have limited time. Another type of consultation is more an in-depth discussion. So this could be, a one-on-one interview with open-ended questions, which will give you the possibility to get clarifying statements about the outcome that you are substantiating. Or you could also decide to do a focus group discussion, which usually generates, a lot of insights and in-depth information when other people hear others about the outcomes that you are asking about. Then you go to ask or fill in this model stating if you're going to carry out, the substantiation virtual or in person. So virtual is usually, through email, or it could be even, Zoom. This is usually the case when you have multiple substantiators in various locations and there's lack of resource to do in-person substantiation. In person can be done if you have access to the people that are going to substantiate, or maybe if people have connectivity issues and it might be difficult to, reach out through a virtual environment, then you can carry out the in-person substantiation. Or maybe you decide to do a hybrid, a combination of reaching out to some people through email or, Zoom, and others engage with in person. The fifth question is about, the type of substantiators. So here you can specify if, for example, the type of substantiators that you will approach are the social actors of the outcome. Maybe it's allies who collaborated and contributed to the outcomes, or maybe it's a completely different type of person who will be your substantiator. That could be explained here. And then finally, how many substantiators will you have for each sampled outcome? So ideally, you should ask for 2 or 3 substantiators per outcome, bearing in mind that you might not get response from everyone. So this will help you to have at least 1 response for each of the outcome. You could also have 1 substantiator that can look at more than 1 outcome to substantiate. Just bear in mind that if you do this, you are asking more time from them. So just make sure that this is doable. I wanted to do a last short exercise with you. I hope that you remember the conversation that Karen and Lauren just had. So thinking back on the case study and the exercise with the outcomes and the conversation with Karen and Lauren, if we think about the type of consultation that was carried out, what would that be in this case? Would that be a simple questionnaire, in-depth discussion, or focus groups? You can respond in the chat, and then I'll go through the model. So thinking about the outcomes that you just looked at and how you would substantiate those in the case study. I think Lauren still has it up on her screen. What type of consultation would you carry out for this? You can give your responses in the chat. Okay, I'll continue in interest of time. So in this case, Lauren mentioned focus groups discussion combined with Zoom interview. So what you could do is you could carry out a focus group discussions to get initial feedback. And then if there's something you want to follow up and you can have a Zoom conversation afterwards, or have a focus group discussions with a group and then with others have a Zoom interview. In this case, the type of, the format of the substantiation would be hybrid because you're doing both something in person and online. They approach people who are knowledgeable about the project, not directly involved with it, and they asked 2 substantiators per outcome, including 1 substantiator who could review more than 1 outcome. So again, this is a worksheet. It's something that can help you, guide you through the last step of pulling it all together. It's optional, but oftentimes it helps to have that information at hand and also to include in your final report. Then what happens when you get your responses of your substantiation? So what happens if you get unexpected responses that you weren't necessarily counting on? So what if substantiators, for example, contradict each other? It could be that they have different views on how a contribution happened or an outcome. It could also be that the substantiator and harvester fundamentally disagree on an outcome. So what to do next? Which implications does this have for future harvest? These are questions that we don't immediately have answers to. We just wanted to post them because it's scenarios that can present themselves. And it really depends case by case how you are going to deal with it. I saw in the chat some comments about whether you should have the harvesters review their outcomes after they receive response from substantiators. Again, that's something that I think you should decide internally and decide for each case. What is important here is that you all agree and that you are consistent with whatever you decide to do. In relation to this, we are thinking of having like a follow-up version of the tool where we incorporate these questions, but we would be really interested in hearing from you what your experience has been with dealing with the unexpected. So maybe we could put together like a document with different case studies of how people dealt with the unexpected and dealt with these questions that are here on your screen. I think it's always useful to know how others, go about certain situations and hear from other practitioners how their experience was. So finally, we have a visual that hopefully helps you to get a more broad view of this tool and what the steps are to go through when you are about to initiate substantiation. So the first step is, as Lauren mentioned, determining your substantiation purpose. So you ask yourself the question if substantiation is necessary now. If not, then you can wait and get back to this question at a later moment. So as Lauren explained, this might be the case when you use outcome harvesting for monitoring purposes. If you do need substantiation now because you're doing, a midterm or end evaluation, then that leads you to step 2, which asks the question about what do we need substantiation for, which was the first worksheet we worked with, step 2A, followed about what resources, opportunities, and limitations do we have. Once you have that ready and you have clarity on those two questions, then you ask yourself, are the data sources sufficient to cover the substantiation needs? So if you have existing data sources, is the information provided there enough to substantiate your outcomes? In case yes, then there's no need to authenticate with independent, knowledgeable person. And as I said, this is mostly the case when you're just looking to confirm factual information. However, if you need more information about the contribution or you want to get a different perspective, then your data sources will not be enough, which guides you to step 3, which is designing your substantiation model. In here, you determine what this model should look like, which is the previous slide I just shared with you. That's it from our side. We still have time for questions, for feedback on your first gut responses about the tool. What do you think? You think it's useful or not? Is there something we should change, add, take out? We also wanted to share that we have a Google Drive with the document where you can provide more feedback once you start using the tool more actively. I need to look the link, but I'll share the link or otherwise in the follow-up email after the webinar, because we would really like to know, if it's being useful and if we need to adapt or change certain things. So I'll leave the floor open for any other questions, feedback, comments. We really look forward to your comments. Yes, go ahead, Tarisirai. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name
Oh, that
wrong.
was right.
Okay.
That was right. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify with the tool, is the tool supposed to help with the decision making, whether to take it to key informants, or is it also I kind of feel like from what I've seen so far, the main thing is about asking whether or not to go into substantiation with the key informants, which is where maybe that's more resource intensive. Because if it is if it is about if it is about making decisions to go for documentary evidence or alternative sources outside of key informants, I did wonder whether or not there's maybe a bit of a skew in what I've heard, at least what I've heard, that is skewing towards substantiation with the key informants. And I think both or combined would be fine. But yeah, I wasn't sure as in, when going through it, is it really about making a decision as to whether to spend the resource to take it a bit further outside of what's available.
What is this skew that you see?
So the skew is I think it's the way I understood it was it was whether to substantiate outcomes or not. And I wasn't sure whether to substantiate includes do we mean substantiate using the various sources, including documentary and key informants, or was it mainly focused on whether to use key informants for the substantiation?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's making sense.
Yeah. It's actually both. When you go into substantiation and you go through the set of questions that this tool is, presenting, consulting documents or data sources is always an option to substantiate. So, for example, if the document talks about, a law that was approved and that you can look up the law and see if that indeed happened, that would be a way to substantiate the outcome statement, right? Or if you are saying that an outcome is that, an actor made an important statement during an activity and there's a document of that, you can also look it back and, check that indeed happened. So that's a way to just verify accuracy of, what happened, what is said in the outcome that happened. However, it doesn't help in, getting that additional perspective on how the change happened, or getting more information about contribution, because you can consult the data sources. You can see, yes, this law was indeed approved, or yes, this person made indeed that statement, but that doesn't tell anything about the contribution, and maybe that's what you're interested in knowing. So in that case, in addition to looking at the data sources, you would need to go to an additional person, a substantiator, to get that information about the contribution. And maybe you don't have any data sources, and then you would need to substantiate everything through substantiators. So it really depends on what's available, but the tool is not saying go do this or do that. It's just guiding you into the questions about, should we substantiate, what do we want to substantiate, what are our constraints, and then do we already have data sources or not, can we use those, yes, no, and then do we need, in addition, to consult third parties substantiators. I don't know if Karen
Okay.
wants to add, or Lauren, and if that's clear enough.
Yeah, I think it was because the substantiation model, for example, I'm looking at the little table here. It doesn't include the options of documentary. It's just, yeah, sorry. The context I work in, some of the things we tend to look for documentary evidence is emails or letters. So we
Right.
take, if an email from the from the social actor says, oh yeah, because of that thing that you did, we've now changed the policy. Here is a copy of it so you can see what's happened. So that's why, yeah, so I
Exactly.
think, yeah, okay, no worries.
Yeah. Can you
Thank
just tell
you.
me which model you refer to, which where you're looking at, so we can check
I'm
that
looking at the
afterwards?
template summary
Yeah.
of your substantiation model. So yeah, I wasn't sure whether,
Okay, great.
yeah,
Thank you.
so that's what I meant about the skew, that it seems to end at the substantiation, the decision whether or not to go into the
Right.
substantiation model bit.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, okay.
We'll add that to make that more clear in the model. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions, comments?
There's a
Feedback?
consideration from Valerie in the chat. Valerie, perhaps you want to explain it?
Yeah, thanks. Now I was thinking that another parameter maybe, which is not there in step 2, is also the confidentiality of the outcome statements. Yeah, talking from experience from our own programs in Oxfam Novi, we do have often different levels of confidentiality, and perhaps the strongest level of confidentiality, then you cannot redo substantiation, but in the lowest level of confidentiality on average. So yeah, I'm starting to see how that would translate in practice in the tool. But yeah, definitely it should be, I think something should be said, if it's applicable, of course, in the project, about confidentiality, because that would have then an influence on yeah, if it
Yeah.
would be possible to do substantiation, or who you would talk with.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, Valerie. Thank you. We'll take that forward. Great. Anyone else? Great. If not, then I want to thank you all for joining us for this a bit longer webinar than usual, participatory, but for us it was extremely useful to hear your first responses and have your input. We will take your comments, adapt where necessary, and then share the tool. We've been working a while on this, so I think we're at a point that we just want to share with the world and see how it goes, and then we can still adapt it later. So I'll send out a follow email with link to the recording, link to the final tool, and also link to a Google Doc where you could provide any feedback you might have once you start using the tool more, or you could also reach out directly to us. Our emails are on the screen, and we will share the presentation as well. Karen, Lauren, anything else you want to add?
No, I wanted to give a shout out to Cho because I think he was among, he was one of our co-authors and he was just, modestly among the participants, whereas he contributed a lot to the process. So I also wanted to say thank you here publicly to him and to Tripti, who were so instrumental in getting us to this point. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep, I'll second that. Hi, Cha. I didn't notice you were here.
Yeah,
Thanks,
me neither.
everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for joining this. We're really happy to, it's been really fun collaborating on this with this group, and we hope that it's useful for everyone. And we hope to continue to collaborate and help the community going forward.
Bye, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.